But let's unpack this. A banana as a tool for ease of access in a seduction scene.
Yeah.
Yes, you heard that right. And that's just, well, a tiny glimpse into the surprising corners we'll be exploring today in our deep dive.
It's pretty fascinating, isn't it? How even a detail like that, something seemingly quite bizarre, becomes a talking point when you're adapting a story for film.
Exactly. Because today, we're diving headfirst into Nick Hornby's world, specifically his journey adapting Lynn Barber's autobiographical essay for the film An Education.
Right.
And you probably know Hornby, best-selling novelist, high fidelity, about a boy.
Mm-hmm.
He's been in the film world before, scripted the adaptation of his own memoir, Fever Pitch.
He did, yeah. Though, as he points out himself, screenwriting isn't always, well, it doesn't always go smoothly. Some projects don't quite make it.
True. And given his varied experiences adapting stuff, it gives us a really interesting angle on the specific challenges here. Taking a personal reflection, like Barber's, and turning into a movie narrative for you. So our mission today, really, is to get under the skin of that process. How do you translate memoir to screenplay? What are the creative choices? And honestly, what's the sometimes bumpy road a film takes to actually get made?
Yeah, aiming for those sort of aha moments, those glimpses behind the curtain.
Exactly, giving you a richer feel for the stories you see on screen, but, without drowning you in information.
And it raises that fundamental question, doesn't it? How do you take a memoir where the author is looking back, they know how it all turned out,
Wait, they have all the insight.
and create a screenplay where the characters are living it right now without that hindsight?
That's the absolute core of it, isn't it? Hornby actually says memoirists know it all. They're reflecting with that 20/20 vision.
Mm-hmm.
But a screenplay, it needs dramatic tension. Often that means, well, you have to hold back that understanding from the characters themselves.
Yeah, they can't know the future.
He gives the example of Lynn Barber's younger self. In the memoir, her dialogue, her voice, it felt right on the page. But Hornby worried. He worried that those same lines, coming from a young actress.
Might sound a bit too knowing, too hard-bitten for her age.
Exactly. Too world-weary, perhaps. It's a tricky balance.
It really is. Balancing faithfulness to the source with what works dramatically, visually in a film. A memoir can lean on that internal reflection, but a film needs action, dialogue, stuff happening now.
And then there's the ending.
Mm-hmm.
In the memoir, Lynn Barber nearly misses out on university. Which, okay, for her, that was huge.
Sure, personally significant.
But Hornby felt maybe for a film audience, it wasn't quite impactful enough. There's a resolution. He talks about how movie endings often need, higher stakes resolving.
Yeah, you think about most films, they build to a clearer climax, don't they? Something more overtly dramatic often resonates more on screen than, say, academic achievement, however important personally.
It's about raising the stakes for cinema.
Right. Which kind of leads into the name change, doesn't it?
It does. Changing the main character from Lynn to Jenny. Hornby mentions practical reasons, but it also, crucially, gave him more creative room.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah, by making her technically fictional, he felt less tied to, absolute factual accuracy. He could amplify the drama for Jenny in ways he might have hesitated with the real Lynn.
So creating that bit of distance allowed him to prioritize the screenplay's needs. It's acknowledging that adaptation isn't just copying, it's reinterpreting.
Precisely. And beyond structure and ending, Hornby also sort of wrestled with the core meaning, for a film audience. What he took from it wasn't necessarily identical to Barber's own reflections.
Right. She might see it as formative, pointing to her future, but he needed to make Jenny's present journey compelling for you, the viewer.
He had to find the cinematic heart of it, really.
Yeah.
Which shows how subjective it all is. The meaning can shift when you change the medium, change the perspective.
Absolutely. So, okay, let's talk about actually getting the thing made, that whole process.
Right, the often bumpy road. Hornby talks about their first meeting with BBC Films' David Thompson, Tracy Scofield, and how, well, surprisingly positive it was.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he kind of expected the usual, polite skepticism you often get in those early development meetings. But apparently, there was real enthusiasm, real understanding from the get-go.
That's huge. That early support, someone championing it, that's often critical. It meant they got the initial funding to actually develop it further with the producers, Amanda Posey and Finola Dwyer.
Exactly. And speaking of early development, we have to mention the banana.
Ah, yes, the banana scene. It's in the memoir and the film. David, the older man, produces a banana when he hopes to sleep with Jenny, sort of a misguided aid.
Right. Hornby kept it because it showed David's awkwardness, his cluelessness. But apparently at a BBC script meeting, David Thompson, the executive, sort of mused aloud, "The banana, could it? Would it work?"
Oh, no. That kind of work.
Exactly. And Hornby describes this silence, and then Jamie Lawrenson from the BBC just deadpans. I don't think it would be a peeled banana.
Brilliant. It just shows those weird, practical, sometimes funny conversations that happen. Even tiny details get scrutinized.
Unpeeled. Apparently crucial. It's a great little glimpse behind the curtain. Anyway, after that positive start, the next big hurdle, finding a director.
Right. Beben Kidron came on board first.
She did, and she worked quite a bit with Hornby on the script. He actually credits her with pushing the idea of Jenny's own complicity.
Drawing on Barber's admission about witnessing the map theft and choosing to ignore it.
Exactly. That added a really interesting moral layer to Jenny, made her more complex.
But then, as often happens...
Scheduling conflicts, yeah. Kidron had another project she'd been developing for ages, and she had to step away, unfortunately.
So back to square one, director-wise.
Pretty much. They started talking to others, and you know how it is. Everyone has different ideas. One apparently suggested setting it in the present day.
Wow, okay. That would have been different.
Hornby wasn't keen, thankfully. He felt it was really important, actually, to get a woman director for that perspective, especially working with a young lead.
Makes sense.
And that's when Lone Scherfig came into the picture. The Danish director, she did Italian for beginners.
Oh, right. Yes.
They were just really impressed. Her approach to the script was smart. She was enthusiastic, and she had this great eye for the details, the nuances of 1962 England. They felt really lucky to get her.
And maybe her being Danish, a bit of an outsider to that specific period, helped her see it fresh. Hornby sort of suggests that.
Could be. Sometimes that distance helps you notice things locals might miss. So, director sorted. Next up, casting.
The crucial part.
And Hornby is very funny about his own involvement here, or lack thereof. He basically says his suggestions were rubbish.
Oh, like who?
Oh, Colin Firth, John Cusack, Hugh Grant, Nicholas Hoult. Even the guy with the haircut from No Country for Old Men.
Right. Not exactly helpful, perhaps.
He freely admits he just trusted the casting director, Lucy Bevan, who he says was brilliant.
Well, a good casting director is invaluable. They know actors, they see combinations you might not think of.
Fully. Though Hornby did say, even with good ideas, sometimes he'd think, oh, God, you can't actually ask him, meaning a big star. Not because they were wrong, just felt too ambitious, maybe.
A bit intimidated.
Maybe. But the producers, Amanda and Finola, they were bolder, and that led to getting Alfred Molina, Dominic Cooper, Rosamund Pike. Real quality.
That ambition really paid off. Getting names like that elevates the whole project, signals quality, helps with everything down the line.
And Emma Thompson agreeing early on to play the headmistress, that was a huge boost too. Instantly gave it, as Hornby puts it, authority and potential excellence.
Definitely.
But then the big one, casting Jenny.
The absolute key role.
Lucy Bevan suggested Carey Mulligan, who was, 22 at the time, playing 16.
Right.
Hornby admits he had reservations initially.
Yeah.
Would that age gap look right? Would it affect the dynamic? Believability is so crucial there.
Yeah, you worry an older actress might bring a knowingness that undermines the character's journey, her naivety.
Exactly. But then they saw Carey in the school uniform, and apparently Hornby thought she looked too young. Joked about it being like some dodgy Lolita remake.
Huh. Okay.
But Carey's mom pointed out she'd always felt self-conscious looking young, and here, it just worked.
Yeah.
She was totally convincing as the schoolgirl, and later, after the transformation.
And her talent was just undeniable, obviously.
Hornby panicked when he realized she hadn't actually been formally offered the part yet, even though she seemed so perfect.
Wow. But it clearly worked out. Her performance was incredible, really central to the film's success.
Absolutely. And then there was the almost casting of Orlando Bloom as Danny.
Oh, really?
Yeah, apparently a bit of a confusing situation, cross wires, phone calls, and he ended up not doing it. But then Dominic Cooper stepped in almost immediately.
Amazing. Sometimes those last-minute changes work out for the best. Shows how chaotic casting can be.
It really does. So unpredictable. Hornby also talks about the read-through, how important that is.
The first time you hear it all together.
He calls it the purest, most fully realized version of the script. The only time the writer hears it start to finish, in order, before filming, messes it all up.
Right.
He even had to play Jenny's dad at the read-through because Alfred Molina couldn't make it. Apparently he just shouted a lot.
I can picture that. But yeah, the read-through is vital. You hear the rhythm, catch awkward bits, feel the whole story arc before the cameras roll.
Then filming itself. Hornby's pretty blunt about it, calls it time wasting.
Really? Even for the people involved.
Yeah, all the hours spent moving lights, tweaking props. But he also seems kind of amazed that this slow, fiddly process somehow results in the teeming humanity of a film set. It's a strange contradiction.
It really is. The technical grind versus the emotional, human result you're aiming for.
The ending also came about quite organically, apparently.
It wasn't always the way it is in the film.
Not exactly.
Ah.
There was an earlier idea, a scene where David finds Jenny later in Oxford. But it felt tacked on, not like a real climax.
Right, a bit anticlimactic, maybe?
Yeah. The final ending really came together through the performances, especially that powerful scene between Carey Mulligan and Alfred Molina, and Jenny's little smile when she gets the Oxford letter that wasn't even scripted.
No kidding. That's a great moment.
Came about during filming, Lone Scherfig's input. Hornby says it's a perfect example of how collaborative film is.
Absolutely. The script, the acting, the direction, the editing, it all feeds into those final moments. Often the best bits arise from that synergy on set.
And the music. Can't forget the music.
Crucial for the atmosphere.
Very deliberate choice.
Yeah.
No electric guitars, no early rock and roll. They wanted 1962, and specifically, Jenny's desire to be French.
So lots of jazz, French chanteuses, classical music.
Exactly. Stuff that places her culturally, reflects her aspirations. But that also meant, money issues. Licensing famous songs is expensive, especially for an indie film. They actually had to write personally to Juliet Greco to ask permission to use her songs affordably.
Wow. That shows commitment to getting the right feel.
Wow.
Music really does set the tone and periods so effectively.
So after all that work,
Yeah.
how did it land? It premiered at Sundance.
Big festival, high stakes.
And the reaction was immediate. Kenneth Turan from the LA Times called it probably the jewel of the festival's dramatic films. High praise.
That's fantastic.
And booking it in a smaller cinema actually worked in their favor, created huge buzz, because tickets were hard to get. That festival heat can make or break an indie film.
Definitely. A great Sundance launch can set a film up for everything else. Attracts distributors, gets critical attention.
Hornby talks about being incredibly nervous at the screening, watching audience reactions. Apparently, a few people walked out.
Oh, wow. That must be nerve-wracking.
Hilariously, one of the walkouts turned out to be Carey Mulligan herself. Couldn't handle the tension, maybe.
Huh. That's brilliant.
And then the Q&A afterwards felt a bit awkward, apparently. Even friends struggled to get tickets. It gives you a real sense of that festival pressure cooker.
Yeah, you pour years into something, then show it to strangers. Intense, even at a big festival.
But despite the personal nerves, it was a huge success there. They got an early distribution offer, not a great one at first, apparently, but then better ones came in, ended up with Sony Picture Classics.
Fantastic. A good distributor makes all the difference.
And it won the Audience Award at Sundance, plus an award for cinematography.
Mhm.
Real validation for the whole team.
Those awards really matter, especially the Audience Award at Sundance. Shows it connected with viewers.
And of course, it was massive for Carey Mulligan, hailed as the Sundance it girl. Comparisons to Audrey Hepburn, even.
Really launched her career into the stratosphere, didn't it?
Absolutely. Put her firmly on the map.
Sundance was the perfect showcase for her talent.
So, yeah, bringing it all together, adapting a memoir, it's this really delicate dance, isn't it, between personal truth and what works dramatically on screen.
Mm-hmm. A balancing act.
And filmmaking itself is just profoundly collaborative, often unpredictable, full of twists and turns and difficult choices. The journey of an education from essay to Sundance hit was definitely not simple.
No, this whole dive really shows that. It highlights all the different contributions. Writer, director, actors, producers, everyone shaping what you finally see on screen.
And that leads us to a final thought for you, listening. Think about that interplay between the real experiences in a memoir and the changes needed for a film adaptation.
Right.
Now that you've heard a bit about the behind-the-scenes stuff, does it change how you see the finished movie at all?
And maybe think about other memoirs. Which ones could make compelling films? And what kinds of hurdles might they face? Translating something so personal for a broad audience.
Definitely something interesting to mull over.